If you're the kind of gamer who wants a PC that just works, no endless driver hunts, no weird BIOS tweaks, and enough horsepower to crank out 144 frames per second on the latest releases without crying over heat, then you're probably already feeling that knot in your stomach. The market is flooded with machines that brag about 12 gigabytes of VRAM or DDR5 memory, but when you sit down to actually play, the things that matter are how fast it boots, whether the fans stay quiet during a long raid, and if the price tag actually matches the daily experience. That tension between hype and reality is why I spent a few days digging through forums, watching build-up videos, and reading the handful of user comments that actually exist for the Skytech Gaming King 95 before hitting the record button. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the King 95 is aimed squarely at the plug-and-play crowd. You order it, unpack the tower, plug it into your monitor, and you're ready to launch a game within minutes. There's no separate GPU you have to slot in, no custom cooling loop to assemble, and the Windows 11 installation comes clean, no bloatware asking you to install Skytech Optimizer or anything like that. That's a big win for anyone who just wants to get to the fun part without spending a weekend on setup. Who should buy this machine? If you're a mid-range enthusiast who plays titles like Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, or Valorant on high settings, and you still want to squeeze out a decent frame rate at 1440p, the King 95 checks the boxes. The Ryzen 7 9700X, clocking up to 5.5 GHz in turbo mode, pairs nicely with the RTX 5070. The exact card brand can vary, but the specs stay the same. In practice, that combo pushes most modern games into the 7090 frames per second range at ultra settings, especially with the 12 gigabytes of GDDR7 memory that helps with texture loading in sprawling open worlds. The 1TB Gen 4 NVMe SSD also means you'll spend seconds, not minutes, loading into a new level, something you'll notice when you're constantly hopping between games or streaming from a library of large titles. If you're a creator who does occasional video editing or 3D modeling, the 16 GB DDR5 RAM running at 6,000 metric tons per second provides enough headroom to keep Photoshop or Blender from stalling when you open big files. The AIO liquid cooler is a nice touch here. I ran a stress test on the CPU for 20 minutes while running a physics-heavy scene, and the temperatures never spiked above 70 C, which is well under the thermal throttling line. For people who care about a quiet workspace, say you have a home office or a shared living room, the fans stay relatively subdued, only kicking up to a noticeable hum when the GPU hits a full load in a demanding title. But here's where the story shifts. If you're a hardcore overclocker who loves tweaking voltages and chasing the highest possible frame rates, the King 95 might feel a little restrictive. The BIOS is locked down to a consumer-grade configuration, meaning you won't find a deep overclocking menu. The RTX 5070 is fine for most gaming scenarios, but it doesn't push the envelope like the flagship RTX 7080 tier. So if you're chasing 4K 144Hz in the latest AAA releases, you'll likely need to lower settings or wait for a future GPU upgrade. The system also comes with Wi-Fi 5, 802.11 AC, which is perfectly adequate for most households. But if you have a gigabit fiber connection and want the absolute lowest latency for competitive play, a wired Ethernet connection is still the safest bet. Another practical weakness is the upgrade path. While the 850W Gold PSU gives you plenty of headroom now, the case design isn't the most spacious. Adding a second SSD or swapping in a larger graphics card might require you to jostle cables and possibly replace the AIO cooler if you decide to go for a custom loop later. The side panel is a sturdy steel sheet, but there's no tool-free access to the interior, so you'll need a screwdriver for any future modifications. If you're comfortable with a bit of tinkering, that's a minor inconvenience. If you expect the PC to stay untouched for years, it's something to keep in mind. From a value perspective, the true appeal of the King 95 lies in its all-in-one nature. You're not just paying for raw specs, you're paying for the time saved by not having to source a separate GPU, a compatible motherboard, and a cooling solution that actually works. The 6,000 metric tons per second DDR5 memory, the Gen 4 SSD, and the high-efficiency PSU all add up to a system that feels future-ready for the next couple of years. When you compare that to buying components separately, you're looking at roughly a 1,520% price premium for the convenience, which is reasonable if you value a hassle-free start. Let's talk about real-world daily usability. I set the King 95 up in a modest 24-inch 144Hz monitor and used it for a full workday of remote coding, a couple of hours of video conference calls, and an evening gaming session. The Windows 11 experience was smooth, no random driver